Webby, you're in the jungle again with your remote cam. How exciting. Our special guest, Jeffery Prather, right? Please
Right.
introduce yourself, sir. That was an amazing intro you did in anticipation of what's hopefully not going to be an ambush interview.
I was commissioned in 1984 as a military intelligence officer because I was already airborne. I got to go into SOCOM. I started out as a psychological operations officer attached into the Rangers and 7 Special Forces. And when Assad opened up, because I had deployed a lot to Central and South America with SF, I went over to Special Forces.
Nice.
While I was getting ready for the Panama invasion, I was recruited. The Special Forces are trainers. Green Berets are trainers. So a team was training a team of long-haired guys. I thought they were CIA. They turned out to be DEA with the Operation Snowcap program, which is kind of like clear and present danger, except it was overt, where you went with host nation, police and military to do counter-interdiction drug labs. So I got recruited, became a Drug Enforcement Administration special agent. I became a firearms instructor, and then I became a special operations snowcap operator with them. At the same time, when I left active duty as a captain, I stayed in the reserves. Because of my background, I got chopped to the Defense Intelligence Agency, UMIT services. I ran across a lot of covert operations because initially I was working the Contra angle. And then I was in Panama right before the invasion when the CIA stopped running Noriega and was starting to do counter drug. And then I went into the DEA and saw the other end of that. And I became a GS-13, which is a senior level working agent, a journeyman level agent. I was working the extradition of Miguel Caro Quintero, who's the brother of Rafael, who tortured and murdered our agent, Kiki Camarena. It's very famous. It's lots of books, lots of movies about that. And as I did that, it became obvious that the most difficult thing about extraditing him from Mexico was my own government. And so I got called to active duty. After 9/11, I volunteered. They didn't take me. After the second Gulf War, 2003, I didn't volunteer and they took me, which is how the military works. And while I was gone, my informant, who was a very high-level informant, started to sue the head of the DEA at that time, Michelle Leonard, the head of the DEA, the administrator. Before that was Karen Tandy. I had worked with both of them on this extradition packet. So I was a major and I had a staff at the Pentagon. I went over from the Pentagon. Right across the street is the DEA headquarters, the U.S. Marshal headquarters. And I went up there and I talked to the guy who ran the confidential source files because he was concerned because my informant was going to sue the administrator. I said, no, I can't do that. Here's the thing. He wanted the State Department $5 million reward. I paid him huge amounts. But I also said, but by the way, Leonard and Tandy have destroyed my case for extradition.
Oh, no.
Went back to work, didn't think anything about it. Then I was immediately began to be targeted and investigated. I was lied about and it was leaked. So I slowly over the years, as I talked to other whistleblowers, and I was also the DEA liaison to ATF for Fast and Furious. I know the guys who carried Brian Terry out of the canyon. I have done lots of Tea Party events with Vince Cefalu, for example, a whistleblower. They fired him 5 times. And eventually I began to figure out what was going on, which was, and this is the first covert illegal operation of the Obama administration, was Fast and Furious, running guns. The ATF was running guns south. 2, but what my end of it was, because you've heard about that, but what you don't know maybe is that Fast and Furious started at DEA with an ATF group at the DEA Phoenix office. So ATF was running guns south, but the kicker is they were running guns to the Sinaloan cartel.
Right.
So when I accused...
Well, let me stop you. What was the official story from Eric Holder? What were they doing? They were
Eric Holder lied and perjured himself multiple times. I had a civil suit against, I'm also a chaplain, and I had a civil suit against Eric Holder. First, he said there was no Fast and Furious. Then he said he didn't know about it. Then he said he signed the affidavits, but he didn't read them. Eric Holder if I had done what Eric Holder had done, or Hillary Clinton, I'd be in prison. And they tried to.
Or Rosenstein, or McCabe,
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
So what happened? So when I finally figured this out, I then started to see a pattern, a template among other special agents, among other intelligence officers, like my peer, Tony Schaefer, who was at the DIA, who data mined Osama bin Laden. DIA did the same thing to him that the DEA did to me. And then you saw them do it to General Flynn, who I didn't work for General Flynn. I wasn't at the DIA when he was there, but the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon, CIA. And then, of course, they did it to President Trump. So now I'm trying to, I'm a retired disabled veteran, and I'm trying to serve my country by telling the truth about the asymmetrical insurgency.
Let me ask you a quick question. I mean, it's not an interview, we'll call it a discussion, right? So when you have, what was his name, Mattis, come out and talk trash about Trump the other day, what's your read on that?
Well, Mattis is well respected, but he's also a Bilderberger guy. He's a hyper rich family guy. He's also a constant war guy. Right. When Trump says, okay, so we've been there, almost 20 years, right. A decade. So what's the end game? And there's no end game. The Niebla Zambada trial, DEA agents raised their hand under oath and said, yes, we did have a deal with the Sinaloan cartel. What I have said is verifiable. It's not conspiracy theory. There is government evidence in federal trial that from 2004 to 2009, right when they were coming after me, that the DEA did have a deal with the Sinaloan cartel to run drugs north in exchange for information on the other cartels. So under Obama, ATF was running guns south to the cartels, which are bigger than governments. Sinaloa cartel was running drugs north.
Whether or not this whole Antifa thing is activated terror cells in the U.S.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Let's talk about that.
I think it's Keith Ellison is the Attorney General of
Minnesota now.
Minnesota. He is a Muslim Brotherhood supporter. He is at Antifa. There's an Instagram thing of him holding up an Antifa handbook. I think I saw it on George's site. He's been doing this for a long time. So the Senate, the Senate and the Congress used to have internal House security elements, and they did away with those. Okay. So the Democrats were targeted by all the enemies of America. Not that the rhinos are much better. They're not much better. They love to lose. But they've been targeted and they've been bought off by the left. And they're getting paid. For example, with Hillary's server in the basement, it was intercepted by 5 hostile intelligence services. So I've been an intelligence officer since 1984. I'm still doing corporate competitive intelligence. So
right.
So and I can't go into detail, right, but I will tell you that there is an unholy relationship in DC between the Department of Justice and the intelligence community. And what that means is that intelligence is analyzed information. It's our best guess. Evidence is fact for court.
Right.
And when you cross the line between those things, and you don't want to, because you want to, in intelligence work, you want to protect your sources and methods. And in law enforcement, you have to expose those in court. That line has been broken for a long time now.
Said psychological operations. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
All right. So psyops, how much of what we're watching right now would you say is a psyop?
95%.
95, and that's including the pandemic. Pandemic. Yes.
So I work now in competitive intelligence in the biotech field. If you go to my site, grin-x.com, you'll see that I have legitimate business in that area. So I'm very familiar. GRIN stands for Genetics, Robotics, Information, Nanotechnology.
Nice.
I mostly work in the genetics field and counter corporate espionage and counter corporate sabotage. And I have done that internationally since 2014, and I'm very proficient at that. So I called very early on that the COVID virus is a bioweapon, and it's totally out of the Wuhan lab. And that's why the FBI finally started to actually act like a real law enforcement organization, counterterrorism law enforcement, when they arrested Dr. Leverett at Harvard and 2 Chinese spies.
Right.
And they've arrested about a half a dozen from other universities. The 1,000 Talents program is an ingenious, overt source program.
You said something that broke up. You said 1,000 what program?
1,000 Talents program is the Communist Chinese Party to recruit American scientists and have them steal biotechnology.
Okay.
And Lieber was going to Wuhan, and you don't hear this, but he had to go to Wuhan to pick up his payments.
Wow.
So anyway, Ed Morales, the hero, the FBI hero, is a friend of mine. But if you look at what the FBI has become, which is an entrapment agency, most of the Muslim terrorism plots are contrived. They entrap some silly Muslim kid and say, hey, do you hate the United States? Yes. You got anything to blow up? No. Well, here's a target. You got any explosives? No. Well, here's some fake explosives. Got any money? No. Well, here's some fake money. And then they take them off and they look like they've done terrorism. Real cases. So we say, in the profession, we say big cases, big problems. Little cases, little problems. No cases, no problems. And everything goes smooth. But the murder weapons were excluded because they don't want to see where that's going. When they hit El Chapo's house, they found a 50 caliber Barrett rifle. 50 caliber, it's an anti-vehicular, anti-helicopter weapon. It was a fast and furious weapon. Nice. So if the ATF was trying to trace guns back, then why would they not have then charged anybody?
Right.
They didn't do anything because they were just running guns because they're trying to destroy our republic.
Let's get George in here. He's chomping at the bit. Go ahead, George.
Well, I spent a week on a cruise with 2 DEA guys, long-term DEA guys. And one of them, I'll just say his name is Frank at this point, Frank W. He had also had this background in special forces. He had been in the Army, Fort Campbell, I believe it was the 101st, done all these jumps, and DEA recruited these special ops guys, these special forces guys, because a lot of this work was in the same place they fought in Central America, a lot of jungle jumps and stuff like that. And just the whole reconnoitering and all that in the jungle and etc. So when I heard Jeffery Prather and his story, I said, oh my God, this is the same thing. And this Frank story that I spent this week with, and I'm talking to his boss as well, who was at DEA. They were out of it by the time Fast and Furious came along, but they said the same thing to me that you said, which is, oh yeah, these weapons went down there. The Sinaloa cartel then brokered them for Guatemala. They brokered them for Libya. They brokered them for Syria. They brokered them for all these covert actions. It was the way of the Hillary Clinton and so forth with their foreign policy to rinse all these weapons. And I followed this guy named Mark Turi down there who was in Tucson where you are, who was a weapons dealer. And he said, yeah, I first 2009, I did Fast and Furious. 2011, I was a small arms broker in Libya. And they just used about 100 or 200 of these small weapons brokers to do 1,000 weapons here, 1,000 weapons there. So when I heard your story, I said, oh my God, this is corroboration of everything we said. And the thing that really bugged me was, like you were saying, Keith Ellison and the whole Muslim Brotherhood had these 22 different training centers in the United States. The weapons were coming from the United States. Jack Abramoff had this system of with BIA with these Indian reservations that were sovereign territory where they were caching weapons as well. And I thought, oh my God, this is what they're going to use against us now. These weapons are here. They're not in Mexico with El Chapo. There's a couple of Barretts in with El Chapo, but most of them are here.
Hmm.
So you're right. So the first major illegal scandal of the Obama administration is Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious was a covert international gun running operation. And what they want you to believe is a couple ATF supervisors in Phoenix, GS-14, said, "Hey, Joe, what are you doing? It's Monday morning." "Oh, nothing, Tom." "Hey, you want to do an international covert gun running operation?" "Yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything before lunch." I've done covert operations in the military and intelligence and law enforcement. In the federal law enforcement, it's called a SARC, Special Activity Review Committee. They go up, everybody reviews them, including the president and including the Secretary of State, Obama and Clinton. And usually they don't go anywhere because the formula should be, if we get found out, is it worth doing? And normally the answer is no, rarely. Clandestine operation is different than a covert operation. Covert operations are going on someplace with AKs, it's not attributable back to the United States. So Fast and Furious was a covert international gun running operation.
Wow.
Benghazi was a covert international gun running operation. Syria was a covert international gun running operation. And this now, Antifa, is a covert international gun running operation.